Okay, next question. So we're going to stick with learners, and today's learners are very different from those even a few years ago and I think we have sort of the pandemic and COVID-19 to thank for some of that, but our learners are changing. So with that in mind, how have you both been adjusting your teaching practices, or have you adjusted your teaching practices to meet the needs of today's learners? And maybe a follow-up that's not actually a follow-up is to perhaps start with, like, how are you finding that learners are different? And then in turn, how are you changing your teaching practices to meet those needs? Sarah, you want to take this one first?
Yeah, so maybe that first part of how am I finding my learners are different. I find my learners are very open with me now about what's going on in their lives, right? The family caregiving responsibilities, their job responsibilities, and so forth. And they don't try and hide it, right? They're like, I've got a lot going on, and there's these other social things that I care deeply about. And kind of a message I feel I get from my students is they want the learning to matter to them, and sometimes helping them make sense of that. Sometimes I can do it, and sometimes I can't. But I'm getting this sense from my learners that they want to learn about things that matter to them. Whereas in generations past, even my generation, I might have had a more sort of broad love of learning, if you will. But now I'm finding it's more and more about the specific interests of students, and that may not apply to all students, but I'm noticing it as a change that people get excited about something in society that is really meaningful to them, and they want to be able to connect things from their classes. This idea of having to take a class because it's part of a curriculum doesn't rest as well with today's learners as maybe it did 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 years ago.
Mm-hmm. And then Sarah, if you could, how has that changed your teaching practice, or has it changed your teaching practice?
Yeah, it has changed my teaching practice. So I'm teaching more than 30 years now. And I think when I first started teaching, it was a lot more about me and my teaching. And now it's a lot more about learners and their learning. So I've made this shift over my career, and I'm like, it's not about me. It's actually not about the content, and it's about these learners and what matters to them. And sometimes we have to teach courses that are required courses, mandatory courses, survey courses. I'm like, how can I help my learners get excited about this content? And so I'm constantly trying to put myself in the place of a learner. And if I get stuck and I think, gosh, this content is really boring, then I might try and rejig either my delivery or the assignments or something so that I can make it meaningful for them.
Isabel?
Yeah, it speaks to me a lot what you're saying, Sarah, and I'm realizing now that my baby 9 years of teaching experience are nothing in this context. What you said earlier about, students being more upfront about their needs, it's absolutely true here as well. And the fact that those multiple hats that people wear, I mean, you're a learner, but you're also perhaps a primary caregiver, you're also, a worker. They are not invisible anymore, right? I mean, students are upfront about them and have learned that they need to ask for accommodations, for special requests when needed. But what I've experienced over the last few years, probably around the time of, the COVID pandemic, is also that I feel like I need to just not so much justify. I have to convince students that certain drier topics matter. And and I think that's part of like the kind of fast food society that we live in. Everything is consumed rapidly. You have only so many minutes to kind of capture someone's attention before they start zooming out. And it's challenging to some extent to sometimes have to make the pitch to students that, yes, I want you to read this entire article and attend class for 75 minutes so that you can understand and really be able to engage so that you can talk about this topic, as opposed to let's watch a 5 minutes video on YouTube on the same topic, right? There are ways, there exist shortcuts elsewhere. And I think there's more of a need recently to convince people that sometimes you need to take the longer road. You need to get lost on the way and wonder, how do I make my way back? As opposed to the quick and dirty fix that, a video or short blog or something like that would provide you. And this is something that I'm still struggling and working with, trying to find ways to get students to appreciate that, okay, this longer article may have required more time and more dedication, but you'll get something you'll learn a lot more, or you'll reflect, or you'll take home a lot more than had you just watched this quick, TikTok video while washing the dishes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really interesting. And I see that too, right? And I think we have social media and everything to thank for that, because everything is sort of instant, and we've lost that desire and then that excitement of sort of trying to figure it out. So that's quite interesting. Thanks to you both for sharing.